up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. Man, we got some news today. We got transfer portal. We got big news in recruiting, of course. And Oklahoma laid an egg last night at Kansas State. Big old stinky one. Big surprise, but not really. And everybody's still talking about Spencer Jones and the big bathroom brawl. New details have emerged. Rage in the men's room, I guess. I think I prefer the brawl in the stall. Ryan, I think you could become a really successful social media influencer if you'll just hang out in the men's room at Logie's with your camera, of course.
Yeah, naturally, because that's where everyone wants to have their cameras out, rolling and filming 24/7. I'm just thankful that the floor for everyone involved looked about as clean as it's looked in years, from what I remember of that bathroom. Ugh. So, yeah, look, you never know what's going to take off, and it appears that this has captured the nation.
Amazing. This is amazing. That's Ryan Chapman. He's in Norman. I'm John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa. Thanks for listening to the SI Sooners podcast. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching on my YouTube channel. SI Sooners is a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. You can find our work at SI Sooners. The website is allsooners.com. Let's start with the news of the day, Ryan. We had to kind of make some adjustments to this podcast because news of the day became some other news of the day. So we're going to get to the brawl in the stall in the second segment. Right now, it's... I was working on the podcast this morning. We'll talk about OU's. We'll talk about the transfer portal. All right, everybody likes transfer portal news. I'm working on the podcast this morning, and my watch dings, right, my Apple Watch, and I'm like, really? Can't you try to set aside a little bit of time? No. Transfer portal news, man, it's always open. This time it is of the exit variety. Theo Howard is leaving Oklahoma. This is a guy who has spent a lot of time in the portal in the last 2 years. Remember, last year he transferred to Oklahoma from UCLA. Well, I thought he was going to be really good at OU. I thought he was really good at UCLA. I can give you his stats real quick. 56 catches, 594 yards as a sophomore, 51 catches, 677 yards as a junior. Figured he'd have a big senior year. He scored 8 touchdowns in 2017, 2018. You got to feel bad for the kid, Ryan. He hurt his wrist really bad in 2019 and played only one game, their game, oddly enough, against Oklahoma. Then he transfers to OU for 2020, tears his Achilles. I thought he was going to have an impact at OU as kind of an older guy, a more experienced guy on what was really a raw, kind of green, inexperienced receiver core last year, and that's how it played out with those guys. But he ended the 2020 season with just 13 catches, 163 yards. He never caught a TD pass. Ryan, I'm sad for him because the couple of times we got to interview him, he seemed like a really mature, kind of straight-up guy. He just never could kind of have that breakthrough kind of performance, I guess.
Yeah, him and Spencer Rattler, John, never seem to really be on the same page. And you have to wonder if that is because he spent so much time rehabbing in what little time everyone actually had this summer to try and get on the same page. So he was a guy that I think made a lot of sense coming in when you say he's going to come in, be that veteran presence in a really young wide receiver room. It didn't play out that way, and now when you're looking into the future, into 2021, you say, okay, Theo Weiss and Marvin Mims, those are two guys that have a whole year under their belt. You feel like they're ready to take up a leadership role. Then you talk about Trajan Bridges, Jaden Hazelwood, those guys coming back into the fold for the entire season, not to mention Austin Stogner and that H-back room, what they do. Then, oh, by the way, you've got more talented youngsters coming in, Mario Williams, Cody Jackson, Jalil Farouk. Like, it's one of those things that it would make sense from a coaching perspective if Howard is about the same as some of those younger guys. You have him for one more year. You have those young guys for the rest of their career. You're probably going to give them the preference anyway. So I think it's just a really weird, unfortunate situation, but thankfully, because of everything we've gone through in this last year, he will get this year back so he can transfer somewhere else where maybe he's a little bit better fit. Not that he was a bad fit to Oklahoma, but just like you said, John, the injuries and everything that kind of lined up for him, it just didn't work out, and it's unfortunate, but this is the good part of the portal. I don't think he's a guy that would have factored in a ton next year. So maybe he can find a place where he can go and be an impact player and get another year of college football under his belt.
Right. I agree. I think this is one of the situations where he saw the writing on the wall like Rambo did, like Trayvon West did. those guys hit the portal because there are greener pastures out there for them. So I thought Theo made a great point when we interviewed him this fall. He said that while everyone else was training for the football season last summer, right, during the pandemic, during the shutdown, he was doing his rehab. And that allowed him to focus his words on what he could control. And he kept a really good mindset about it. He pointed out that most people don't come back from that injury, blown Achilles, but he did it in 6 months. He said he was thankful for that. So best wishes to Theo Howard. I think he'll be a really good hand for somebody next year, and I'm glad he gets to play a sixth year somewhere if he wants to. Okay, Ryan, let's talk hoops, man. Last night, OU at Kansas State. Yikes. Lon Kruger, he got the monkey off his back in Ames last weekend, got his first win there in his first 10 years at OU, but the monkey in Manhattan has a firm grip. Lon Kruger falls to what, 1-9, I think? 9 straight losses at Bramlage, where his jersey hangs in the rafters. He's one of the most decorated players in the history of the Kansas State program, and no matter what, Ryan, no matter how good OU is, no matter how bad Kansas State is, no matter how close Bruce Weber is to being fired, remember that a couple of years ago, and they come out and they beat OU, or how close Kruger is to making a Final Four run, talking to you, 2015, 2016, right? They just can't seem to win in Manhattan, Ryan. Why is that?
Look, I think first off, for whatever reason, Bruce Weber is just the worst coaching matchup for Lon Kruger. Like you said, it doesn't matter how good, bad, ugly either team is coming into the game. That's one of those games that you got to just circle and say, Lon Kruger really struggles against Bruce Weber coach teams, which is why I was so stunned earlier this season when the Sooners went out and, John, I think the final score was 76-50 in the first matchup. Like, I get that Kansas State is bad, but it doesn't matter how bad they've been. Kruger just doesn't hammer Weber teams. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, like, outside of Austin Reeves and Davion Harmon, you got no offensive contributions from anyone. Emoja Gibson, he goes 2 of 11. You're not going to win many games doing that. Elijah Harkless, Brady Manick, the other starters, they were just gone offensively. And it's one of those things that Austin Reeves crucially picks up that foul and then the technical foul as he's falling down before he's even gathered himself and can think about getting back up off the hardwood. He's already been teed up for his second foul. That sent him to the bench, and you kind of thought the Sooners, it wasn't pretty, but they were almost, it felt like, in cruise control in the first half there, and then the offense just totally fell apart with only Harmon really able to do stuff. So I just think it's one of those things that you're going to have an off game in the Big 12 slate. It's just going to happen. The Sooners haven't really been playing pretty basketball since maybe, I don't know if the Alabama game is considered pretty, but this Oklahoma team is scrappy. Unfortunately, it means they've played a lot of close games. They've been really good in those games, John, but you're going to drop one of those, and the worst is just catastrophic for what they were trying to do, building momentum to be a 2 seed in March. So it's wild that they just can't ever seem to get it done. It is the octagon of doom. Maybe just like all of us, John, they were thrown off by the mismatched lavender and just classic purple shorts. I don't know what went on last night in Manhattan.
I don't know what was weirder, that technical foul call or that YMCA intramural league uniform combination that they keep rolling out. That thing's atrocious. I know there's a reason for it. I don't care, man. It looks awful. It looks so JV. Anyway, Ryan, number one, I got to give it up to Kansas State. You and I, didn't get to go to the game, this road game. We had to watch it on TV like everybody else, but I think you can really notice, even on TV, when one team is really playing hard on defense and the other one isn't. Yes, Oklahoma played like junk on offense for the most part, but give it up to K-State. I thought the reason OU was so bad on offense was because of Kansas State's fanatical defensive effort, and it showed. Hats off to Bruce Weber for getting a team that's really limited in a lot of ways to play their butts off. I thought that disrupted almost everything OU was trying to do offensively. And then, I'll say this, you know me, Ryan, and all my listeners, all the viewers on YouTube, you guys know me. You know I'm not a fanboy. You know I don't cheer for a team or root for wins or any of the, I don't own any Crimson and Cream, right? And if you don't know that, sorry, folks, but that's just the job for the last 35 years. They pay me to be objective about the teams that I cover and the games. And I can honestly say, listen to me now, objectively, last night in Manhattan, the home team got a lot of those 50-50 calls. There's no doubt, including that technical that we talked about. A lot of those calls, the bang-bang calls, what's he going to call this time? He blew his whistle. What's he going to call? You get that little split second of indecision. You're not really sure which way. Almost every one of them seemed to go Kansas State's way. There was those piled up, obviously, and made a difference, but there was a couple of early calls, the block charges, that were very similar both ways. And yet both calls, almost back-to-back, it was like within a 2 or 3 minute span. They both went for the home team. Block over here, charge over there. It's like, what? Okay. But, stuff goes down like that, and you kind of expect that. That's where the phrase home cooking comes from, right? That's where, the home team just gets calls. The officials sometimes get caught up in the surge of the crowd, but that's the thing. There's not really a crowd in the COVID era. So you kind of hope it evens out. I don't think those calls last night evened out. And here's another thing, more evidence of what I'm saying. Lon Kruger, his demeanor on a lot of those that he was arguing the calls, he doesn't really lose his mind very much, and if at all, really, truly. There was about 5 or 6 calls last night where he was really giving the officials the business. You get down to the final play then, right? I thought he was going to play this one a little longer, but he didn't. He backed off and just said the ball didn't go in. But the 3-pointer from Austin Reeves, yeah, it looked like his arm was contacted, right? Grazed, just kind of skimmed. I don't know. The guys on the call, on the broadcast, said it was an obvious foul. I'm not going to go there and say it was an obvious foul. I don't think it was an obvious foul. But I do think there was some minor to moderate level of contact on the shooting elbow. Like, did it affect Reeves' shot? Yeah. If nothing more than he exaggerated his shooting motion at the end to try to get a whistle. I think that messed him up as much as anything. I don't know, Ryan. Last 10 or 15 seconds, most officials are not going to call that. They don't want their whistle. Right or wrong, they don't want their whistle to determine the final score. What'd you think of that play?
So I thought, first off, going back before that final 3, I was confused why the Sooners opted for the quick 2 on the possession before that, John, knowing that they had to foul Kansas State 3 times to send them to the line. I guess they were just confident that maybe they could force a 5-second call or get the turnover, but K-State hadn't been particularly sloppy with the ball down the stretch there. And so I don't know. I felt like that just maybe took Austin Reeves out of rhythm a little bit. He wasn't like otherworldly down the stretch there, but I do think, John, no matter how little the contact was in the modern NBA, modern college basketball, we have become so conditioned that if you sneeze on a guy's shooting elbow, especially 30 feet from the basket, you are sending that guy to the free throw line. Like, that's just what happens. So for the standards of basketball that, Austin Reeves grew up playing, that we've become used to seeing, I don't know how that was not called a foul. Now, it's no guarantee that Austin Reeves would have gone to the free throw line and knocked all 3 of those shots down. He had a 1-and-1 just a few minutes earlier that he missed the front end of. I know that Austin Reeves is the best free throw shooter in the conference, but it's no guarantee. I would just say, no matter how you felt about the fouls, which it did feel very Fog Allen at times, there was a really crucial moment there with about 5 minutes elapsed in the second half, John, where Bradford was on the receiving end of 2 really quick touch fouls that I'm not sure were really that much contact at all. And Bradford was the menace down that end of the first half and helped Kansas State get off to that run in the second half. And when that kind of took him out of the game, took him to a less aggressive place for that next 2 or 3 minutes, that's when OU held the Wildcats scoreless for 5.5 minutes almost. If you're an elite team, if you want to go and be a top 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, if you want to be the number 2 team in the Big 12, I don't care what calls have happened leading up into that point. You got 2 good calls there. You have to make your opponent pay. You have to extend that lead out, and you have to finish the game out. So while there was fouls all over the place, all that stuff, you can chalk that up, like you said, in any road game, John. It is the Big 12. Consistency isn't necessarily the name of the game when it comes to officiating all the time in this conference. If you want to be an elite team, if you want to be that team, the number 7 team in the country, you have to roll with the punches, extend that, and make it to where McGurl can't roll off a 9-0 run and bury you with about 2 minutes left.
Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, let's get ready to rumble. Hey, listen up. Winter's here, okay? But you know the season's in Oklahoma. Cold one day, hot the next. That's a lot of work for your heating and air unit. But the guys at Trade Pros, they got you covered. Sign up for one of their no-hassle service plans. You can go pro, become elite, or the best deal's the MVC, most valuable customer. They'll come out twice a year and tune up your AC and your furnace. You get priority scheduling, and you get additional discounts. Just call Caleb or Carrie at Trade Pros, 405-249-7290, or go to TradeProsOKC.com or look them up on Facebook. Trade Pros. That's one word, Trade Pros Heat and Air. Follow SI Sooners on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Find Ryan at Radio's Ryan, and I'm at John E. Hoover. Our website, allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate. We are part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All of our content for now is free. No memberships, no subscriptions, no credit cards. Just click and enjoy. The video version of this podcast is over on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. Remember to subscribe to my other YouTube channel right here. Ryan, we got new details on the Brawl in the Stall. I hope you guys liked my Michael Buffer impersonation. I used to be able to do that really good when I was younger. Didn't really go through it today. Didn't really rehearse, but I hope you all enjoyed it. You know, Jean Jacket guy, the talky one? Well, he's been identified as a former OU football player. Got all kinds of developments in this thing. First off, let me just say, I'm being totally sincere when I say that I hope that Spencer Jones and his buddy and the two Brown brothers that they got in a fight with, I hope everyone is okay. Everyone is not okay, but I hope everyone becomes okay. All right? That was a pretty brutal fight. If you guys have probably heard by now that Spencer Jones, I should back up, and if you don't know that name, he's the guy who holds for OU on Gabe Burkich's field goals and extra points, right? He's the holder. He's a walk-on receiver. He's a former walk-on, I should say. He's a senior at OU. He's going to come back for his 6th year of eligibility. He announced previously, I think in December, January maybe. He got put on scholarship in December. He won that goofy Mortel Award as the holder of the year. Thing's totally not serious. But Spencer was obviously involved in a fracas, shall we say, a bar fight in the men's room back on February 13th. It was at Logie's on the corner in the men's room. Ugh. And Spencer and his friend, who the Daily identified just today, as I mentioned right before we got on the podcast, former OU football player Andrew McGee. Yeah, I had to look him up too. He played for the Sooners, or he was on the roster for the Sooners in 2018. They got into a spirited discussion on the video with two other men, and yes, there was a video, and yes, it went viral, of course. Listen, if you haven't seen it real quick, you need to go to allsooners.com. We just now posted the updated story right before the pod, and we have the video on there. In the video, there was some, shall we say, swearing. There was some threatening words. There was some aggression. There was a push, a shove, kind of, I guess, followed by two pretty severe beatings in the men's room on the floor. Spencer, he got a lawyer, Woody Glass, who has represented OU athletes before. Remember Mike Ballaghan? That was Woody Glass's client. Mr. Glass told the OU Daily that his client sustained a fractured orbital socket, required surgery, nearly lost his left eye, and was only trying to de-escalate the situation. Sure. The other parties, the Brown brothers, Braden Brown and Walker Brown, turns out that they're wrestlers. They're not OU wrestlers, okay? They're not college wrestlers. They just kind of grew up wrestling. They're trained MMA fighters. Their dad owns a gym in Norman. They train constantly MMA fighting. Yikes, those dudes are bad news. Not them, but I'm just saying MMA fighters. Don't mess with MMA fighters. Their attorney issued a statement today that said basically, Ryan, that there's more to the story. Yeah, which we thought. There's a reason that his client, and at the start of the video anyway, has a bloody nose. His attorney called it assault and battery. He also said that Walker Brown has a torn biceps muscle from the fight and needs surgery. As of this recording now, Walker has started a GoFundMe page. It's raised almost $30,000. That's going to go to his medical and his legal expenses. Braden Brown, he posted immediately after the fight the video was posted on Twitter, that they were basically left with no options. Now, Ryan, at the risk of hogging this whole segment here, I need to say this. We are not here to adjudicate this thing, you and me. We are not here, number one, to say this guy did this wrong and this guy shouldn't have done that. No. There were clearly some things happened before the video turned on. As I said, Walker Brown appears to have a bloody nose. The guy ID'd as Andrew McGee appears to be concerned about, I don't know, something on his chin, maybe a cut, maybe a scratch, maybe some blood. I don't know. He was looking in the mirror before the things got heated up. So we don't know what happened before the camera went on. So you and me, we're not going to sit here and say he was at fault. He was at fault. No, he was. We're not going to debate Oklahoma's stand your ground laws. We're not going to try to figure out what constitutes self-defense or who pushed who or who swung the first punch or who's to blame or who's going to jail. That's stupid. We're not here to do that. You guys watching, listening, you've seen the video already and you formed your conclusions. I'm not here to convince you either way. The Norman police have opened their own investigation, and I'm happy to let them do their job. Both lawyers say there will be no more comments until the police finish. Ryan, I need to get you in here. This thing went viral for a handful of reasons. It's a big old football player who appears to be picking a fight or bullying or otherwise trying to intimidate some smaller dudes. We don't know what happened before the camera rolls, so we have to guess at that part. Two, it's a couple of MMA fighters, and their reaction is impressive. Those guys obviously always draw a crowd. Three, as I said earlier, those beatings are severe. It's kind of shocking, actually. Spencer and his friend, identified as Andrew McGee, they got tuned up. And four, did I mention it's in a men's room? It just gives me shivers. Gross, dude. Gross! No masks either. Guys are at the urinal. They're trying to do their business. They're probably peeing all over themselves as the bodies hit the floor, right? One dude steps away. Looks like he wants to break it up for a second. He grabs Walker Brown's shirt just for a second. Then he rethinks it and thinks better of it, takes his drink, steps over, and gets the heck out. What's crazy about this, Barstool got it, TMZ got it, Pat McAfee got it, Outkick, Complex Sports, all the usual media subjects got it and put it out there. And once the MMA community got a hold of it, yeah, it became almost like a recruiting video. Ryan, my man, I have talked long enough. I've said all I can say on this stupid thing. Go to allsooners.com if you want to read our latest. I want to get your thoughts, Ryan. Your thoughts on the video.
Yeah, so this is one of those things that I saw it, and the first pass that I watched it, my initial thought was not, oh, that's an OU football player or anything like that. I was just like, oh, that's the bathroom at Logie's, and this is a scene that I have, bared witness to multiple times. You know what I mean? It's not uncommon. It's not this, outworldly thing. Like it's a thing that happens when you have guys who are college age, who have alcohol in them, and for whatever reason, the bathroom makes people just a little bit frisky. It's tight quarters. You're almost always going to accidentally bump into someone, something like that. So even if, in a, I guess, more normal circumstance, one not like this, look, there are people that the bathroom draws out the worst in all of us. So that was the thing. I just was intrigued by it initially just because, like, okay, this is just a bathroom bar fight, and almost the entire fighting experience got caught on video, so that was kind of unique. Like you said, it's just, we don't know enough about what went on before, directly after, any of that stuff. It's just one of those things that, look, Spencer Jones and his buddy there, they got the worst of it, and unfortunately for them, or not unfortunately, depending on what happened beforehand, like most of us who, if you get beat up like that, usually it's not on camera, not blasted out over Twitter, and then you don't have people that immediately recognize you and, plaster your name all over it. So it's just one of those things that, look, there are instances like this on every campus, I'm sure. I'm sure every single year for every one bar fight involving a football player on a campus that comes out, there are another 10 that happen. No one ever knows about it other than the whispers of the people that were there and all that stuff. So it's just one of those things that, unfortunate, not unfortunate, whatever you want to call it, it just happened to be on camera. I hope everyone's okay, obviously. I wasn't too bothered, appalled, whatever you want to say, just because I'm just like, look, I've witnessed that with many more people that are much less anonymous than those guys. It is what it is. That's life on a college campus, at a bar, in the wee hours of the morning. Like, I'm not going to freak out about this one way or another. And like you said, all the legal stuff, that's all going to work itself out. The investigations, that's all going to work itself out. You just hope that everyone on both sides ends up okay and doesn't have long-lasting medical effects from a decision that I'm sure if they all look back, they all would say, we would just rather this confrontation probably didn't happen.
I completely agree. Something else that I want to stress here. Fighting is bad, okay? I've been there. Listen, voice of experience here, kids. You got that rage, you got that adrenaline, you got that testosterone, but do you have the maturity and the smarts to get yourself out of a fight? Listen, anybody can get into a fight. It takes someone pretty damn clever to be able to get out of a fight. Trust me, walk away. If you can't walk away, talk your way out of it. Shovel the BS. Buy the guy a drink. Don't try to fight your way out of it. Now there's doctors and lawyers involved, and all you get is hurt and poor from this deal, right? And then the other thing I want to say is this. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Spencer Jones, I'm guessing that he's probably going to be okay. I mean, big picture, okay? I hope his surgery went well. I hope he doesn't have any nerve damage. I hope his vision is 20/20. But big picture, I could see, and I'm being serious here. It sounds funny, but I'm being serious. I could see like 2 years down the road, Spencer Jones is hosting like a YouTube channel, right? And then he does an appearance on the Dan Patrick Show, and they ask him about the fight. And then he's on Jimmy Kimmel. And then he gets a spot on The Bachelor or Survivor. Is that still a thing? Or something like that. Can he sing? Maybe he'll be on The Voice. I don't know. Anyway, I think he turns this into something positive for him. I do. I'm serious. Look at him. He's a good-looking kid. He's got that kind of, if you've seen him around, if you've seen video of him, not this video, I'm not talking about this video, other videos. He's got kind of a magnetic personality. He's funny. He doesn't take himself too seriously. Maybe not in a men's room of Logies, I guess. Do you remember the little silly the Mortel Award acceptance speech for the Mortel Award when he says, even though my draft stock has never been higher, I'm going to come back to college football and play for the Sooners for a 6th year. He totally gets it. He's a funny dude. He's engaging. I've got that video also, allsooners.com, by the way, if it's right there in the story. If all this, before all this happened, I don't think he took himself seriously. He probably does now. Anyway, it just kind of strikes me as one of those guys, like maybe the next Jesse Palmer kind of guy, right? So anyway, I think things are going to turn out for him. One thing I do know, we haven't heard the last of it. The GoFundMe page, like I said, is is near $30,000 now. Both guys have an attorney. Both attorneys are talking to the media, or at least issuing statements. So there will be more, unfortunately. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we got so much recruiting to talk about. Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond, or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at all_Sooners. Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. Some quick news if you haven't seen it. The Big 12 has scrambled the men's basketball schedule. It's been kind of hard to keep up with, but they canceled some, they moved some. Basically for OU, it boils down to this. The second Baylor game has been canceled, and that's, believe me, that's a good thing for OU. That's a good thing for Baylor too, and it's probably a good thing for the Big 12 overall. All right, number one, OU don't want that smoke. Baylor's too good. Number two, if Baylor comes to Norman and loses, they're probably still going to be a number one seed, right? But they drop down a couple of spots, or maybe if they don't win the tournament, if they lose somewhere along the line in the tournament, they might drop down to a 2 seed. I don't know. You don't know what the committee is going to do. Anyway, both those scenarios are bad for the Big 12. So canceling that game, good for the Big 12 overall. So for Oklahoma, you've got Oklahoma State and Norman on Saturday, Oklahoma State in Stillwater on Monday, like a Bedlam home and home series back-to-back, I guess. That's cool. It's going to be weird, but it's cool. And then they finish March 4th with Texas in Norman. So 3 games left. OSU, and Texas. If Oklahoma comes out of that 3-0 or even 2-1, I think a 3 seed is safe for sure. I think a 4 seed is possible because if they had won last night at Kansas State, I think a 2 seed would be something that this team, if they, again, finish 3-0 down the stretch and then make a run in the tournament. A 2 seed would have been possible, but I think that loss last night hurts them. That was a K-State team that was 6-18, 3-13 in Big 12 play. Not a good team, not a good loss. Okay, Ryan, let's get to recruiting. You had a one-on-one conversation with Oklahoma's newest verbal commit. Impressive guy, and he had some great quotes. Check it out, allsooners.com, if you want to read more. Jason Llewellyn, Ryan, tell us about it.
Yeah, so this was a weird recruitment even for COVID, John, because Jason Llewellyn, he's a tight end out of Aledo, Texas, which if you are followers of OU running back drama, you'll say Aledo. Yeah, that Aledo. And he's only a 3-star recruit right now, but I don't know if people have gone through and reclassified yet or not, John, but all you have to do is see what teams have thought of his junior year tape. He had basically no major offers. And then in December, I think Rice was the first one in for him. And then from there, it's just been big name after big name coming in and offering him. He's kind of... So when you think of the tight end H-back room, you think of pure wide receivers or pure receivers, kind of like Austin Stogner a little bit as he came in, or you think more of the fullback type, like a Jeremiah Hall. Llewellyn's kind of a bridge between those. He's a great blocker on the end of the line there. He obviously has great hands and the ability to make plays in the open field. So I'm really excited to see, what Lincoln Riley and Joe John Finley can do as far as drawing up different stuff for him, because he's kind of uniquely able to do both. And when I talked to him, so he committed to Oklahoma 6 days after he received the initial offer, which was kind of one of those things of, okay, I kind of want to get a feel for him, see if I feel like it's a guy that, is kind of prone to making quick decisions like that. And so maybe we have to look out for it, or if this is just something that he knew. And I think when you talk to him, he had a really good idea of what he wants. His dad played linebacker at TCU, so playing college football has been his dream his entire life. And he was saying how he's worked so hard. It was finally, that finally moment once he started to get those offers in. But he talked about Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma, and not just how they win games, winning 6 Big 12 championships in a row, John, but he talked about what they do with the tight end position and how they utilize it, make them a focal point of the offense, and how that's attractive to any kind of tight end. And he went on virtual visits to Arkansas and Oklahoma, and I think Texas Tech was the other one, and he just said that they were all great, but Oklahoma's was just a little bit different. You could feel that family atmosphere within the coaching staff, and he said that it was just one of those things that his gut feeling, he immediately knew Oklahoma was the place for him. So I expect this to be a recruit that sticks, and when they get him on campus, it'll be really exciting because this is a guy, like I said, he can do it all. And so it'll be really interesting to see what kind of things the Sooners draw up for him, because he will be a lot more versatile than maybe even a Stogner or a Hall. He may not be as good a blocker as Hall. He may not be as good a receiver as Stogner, but he can do it all, and he'll be a real headache for defenses once Lincoln Riley and Joe John Finley get their hands on him and start to develop and craft with him.
Ryan, one of the better linebackers in the 2022 class, arguably the best player in Nebraska, Devin Jackson, put OU in his top 5 this week, along with Texas A&M, Arizona State, Miami, and Notre Dame. Where's he going to go? Who's he going to help?
So right now, I feel like if you said, all right, Ryan, you got to pick one right now, Notre Dame seems likely. One of his former teammates is currently on the roster for the Fighting Irish. He kind of talked glowingly in an interview he gave about their academics and things like that. The only real hang-up here is that he's a guy that explicitly said, John, that he doesn't really love cold weather. So if you're not going Notre Dame, I feel like Texas A&M might be the other place, just because he also talked about their development and putting guys into the pros and things like that. And he's going to be a boon to whoever he grabs. If you think kind of, he might not be as big as him right now coming out of high school, but if you think in the mold of what type of player Kenneth Murray was, just in the fact that he's so athletic that anywhere sideline to sideline, you didn't feel like that was out of his range. That's the kind of player that Jackson kind of projects to be. So I really think if you had to say right now, Notre Dame, especially with the linebacker class they're about to put into the NFL, it just makes a lot of sense. But if he wants to say that warm weather, like, oh, you'll have a chance. But I feel like A&M would be the other place just because, again, they just have a few years jump on Oklahoma as far as putting some guys into the NFL more recently.
Now, as you wrote, Ryan, over the weekend, Calvin Thibodeau has had a busy week offering a couple of 2023 defensive linemen. What do you know about those guys?
Yeah, so let's start on the outside with Avion Carter. He's a guy that hasn't really been rated by anyone. He's got a pretty small offer list. It's mostly Big 12 schools and then USC, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But he's a guy that he lives out on the edge in Amarillo. He's been used as both a stand-up defensive end and hand-in-the-dirt edge rusher. And he's someone that I think you can really see what Oklahoma would want to do with him. Maybe what kind of the role that Ronnie Perkins played is, yes, he's that edge rusher, but he's also, intelligent enough to stay home, play the run, and do that very well. A guy that I would project you would want him to be an every down type of guy. So that's what Oklahoma did on the edge. Then you move inside. There's Jordan Renaud. He's out of Arlington, and he's a 4-star graded by 247 as of right now. And I gotta say, John, he reminds me a lot of what we saw out of Isaiah Thomas this year, if you're going to project that, as far as his just first jump off the line is incredibly quick, and he's got that power to move offensive linemen around anywhere he wants to go. Right now, he's only about 6'3", 265, so I'm not sure if you can imagine him getting up into that Neville Gallimore, Perion Winfrey just size range, if that makes sense, John. But if you think, what Isaiah Thomas did as far as the versatility moving outside and inside, that makes a lot of sense. It looks like right now, OU, Texas, and A&M will be the 3 for both of these guys. It's early days. Obviously, they're 2023 kids. Plenty of time for more schools to get involved. But this just sounds like a good old-fashioned Southwest scrap here, John, as far as the defensive line recruiting out of Texas.
Awesome. What do you think of Ish Harris? He's labeled as an athlete. He plays a lot of offense, carries the rock as a running back, but probably projects more as a linebacker. I think Brian Odom was the one who offered him. You think he can play defense in the Big 12?
Oh, I think absolutely. We talk about guys that can cover sideline to sideline. Well, this is a dude that went out and just he popped off a cool 1,800 yards last year as a running back. You think he can scoot a little bit? He's only 190, so this is not a guy I wouldn't expect Harris to come in and be a true freshman really fighting for time. I think they're going to want to put a little bit of weight on him. I think that you might be able to see him used as maybe just a NASCAR package, stand-up linebacker edge rusher if he plays early as he grows into the body and the position. But he's not, like, you look at his frame, and I see a guy that could, within 2 or 3 years, grow into a frame not dissimilar to maybe a Brian Asamoah right now. Shane Witter's not outside of the question. So, he can obviously pack it in to play that position. And when you just talk about that mobility, that athleticism, that's everything you want in a modern linebacker, especially trying to, deal with the ebbs and the flows of the Big 12. Yes, it's changed over the last couple of years. You got more teams that aren't so crazy Mike Leach, but you're still going to get spread out, and there's great athletes in space in this conference. So he's a guy that I feel like could definitely fit that mold. The question, though, is always going to be, he's been offered as a linebacker. All the major schools that are in for him are looking at him, it looks like, defensively, at least those that I've seen. Is that conversation going? Well, because you never know when a guy's content to say, maybe I'm not going to go to the biggest school, I just want to play running back. So we'll see. But if he decides he wants to be a linebacker, if he's bought into that and Oklahoma lands him, he could definitely be an impact player 2 or 3 years down the line once he gets on campus, I feel like.
Yeah, man. Speed D, right? I mean, perfect fit for what Alex Grinch is trying to build. You got a story coming up on some new offers this week as well, but let's give the folks a quick preview right here. Jaquazi Petaway, wide receiver in the 2023 class. What do you know about him?
So, John, I know that he's fast, and he's real fast. You just look at his tape, and you immediately get visions of, like, I watched him, and I'm just thinking, wow, this looks like a lot what we saw out of Marvin Mims a lot for this team this year. If you're talking about just a recent guy, the way that he can stretch defenses vertically, the way that and this is only on film, obviously, COVID, all that, haven't been out to see him in person, but on film, it looks like he does a great job of tracking the ball, running under it to make those deep passes look very accurate, seamless, and easy. And that's just one of those things, John, that it's hard to really coach. A guy can either do that or he can't. The explosion, the speed, that's all there. So he's a burner for sure. You can move him onto the inside there and really, really put defenses in a pretzel. So it's hard not to, like, you put on the tape and you're like, oh, Lincoln Riley, Dennis Simmons, they're going to have a lot of fun if they can get this guy on campus.
And then Richard Young is a running back, also in the 2023 class.
Yeah, so Richard Young, 247 Sports has him rated as the number 1 running back. The number 2 running back, obviously, is Ruben Owens, a guy that Sooner fans should probably get pretty familiar with. When you see, Young, you think, wow, to me, he reminds me of just that smooth running style. Not necessarily exactly like Kennedy Brooks, but he's just so decisive, John. As soon as he gets the ball, he's making that read on the line of scrimmage, and he knows exactly where he's going. The way he just bounces off would-be tacklers, and it looks like he's never really trying that hard to run. Then you look up and you start measuring with your pencil up across the screen. You're like, oh no, he's definitely running away from all those defenders at the end of play. So the Sooners are by no means the only guys in on this. I think a day after Oklahoma issued the offer, Alabama comes in or hours after and says, hey, we'd like that guy too. So buckle in, get your emotional support animal if you're seeing a running back battle with Alabama. I know those haven't gone well for Oklahoma over the last couple of years, but it'll be interesting to see because it feels like in 2023 Oklahoma's all in on Ruben Owens. But hey, when you miss in 2 straight classes as far as your number 1 target, I know Seth McGowan came in as well the year that Oklahoma lost Jason McClellan. Like, you're going to be able to take a few more running backs in the next few years, and he's a guy that if he says I want to come to Oklahoma, and Ruben Owens does as well, hard for me to believe Oklahoma would say no to either of those guys.
Does Alabama seriously have to steal all the good running backs? I mean, geez.
They have to take all of them, John. Yes, they need every single one of them.
Hey, if you haven't seen my story on Jake Taylor, the big offensive lineman from Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, I talked to him last week, and he told me that OU was the only school he's actually visited, at least to this point, and OU was the first school to call him. And he told a very hilarious story about that call. OU made a seriously good impression on him. His big brother, Bo, plays at UCLA, and Bo called Chris Murray, the offensive lineman who transferred to OU from UCLA last year. He asked him about OU. Chris Murray gave a glowing recommendation of the Sooners. Jake Taylor is down to Oklahoma, Alabama, and Notre Dame. Not a bad final 3, if you ask me. And you know what? I'm confident you can find that story and lots more recruiting at allsooners.com. Hey, shout out Tiger Woods real quick, huh? Man, scary situation. So glad he's on the mend, Ryan. Hopefully the doctors have worked their magic. Listen, whether he plays golf again or not, or wins a major or not, or becomes a golf instructor, or just hangs on to his little side hustle as a Nike pitchman, man, I don't care. Ryan, it doesn't matter because I just hope he gets well soon. He's got a family to think about as well. I want you guys to listen to the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or on your Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, please play the SI Sooners podcast. You can find it on our website too. That's allsooners.com. Click on the player and listen either on your phone or your tablet or your computer. Or you can always watch the video version on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.